Welcome, everybody, to the show. I actually flipped that switch incorrectly. So welcome, everybody, to Counterclipping show number 193 for October 7th, 2024. Our topic tonight is Wargame replayability. We'll try and explore that from a couple of different angles as usual. I am clipping. We're back to advanced PTO from Decision. Stigler will appreciate this. And we're back to drinking the Jack Daniel's single barrel rye. I'm not a huge fan of the regular Jack Daniel's, but this stuff is really good. So, and I like rye whiskey anyway. So we are working on American Naval at the moment. So let me get us started and yes, the chat thing is working, and I did absolutely nothing to fix it. I suspect that all that had to happen to fix it is just to restart OBS, because it's an OBS plugin, and it could have gone out of date, but apparently it got updated, so we're all good. So that is great. So if you haven't done so already, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and there's a whole bunch of ways in the video description to help the channel out by supporting it. But remember, you are in fact supporting it just by being here tonight, so thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whom it would be impossible to keep doing this. So thank you, patrons. Thank you in particular to Matt Brinson, who has stepped up to the swordsman level, I should say, entered at the swordsman level this week. And let's fix this. Normally, I don't like to do this live on the air, but we're doing it anyway. So let me get the ticker up. So thank you, Matt, big time. It will really help a lot. It all adds up at the end of the day. Super chats and super stickers are on. It's a good way to get your comment highlighted so I don't miss it, because otherwise that does tend to happen quite a bit. Since I turned the ticker on, there have been 79 comments on the comments tab here in StreamYard, so it's a lot. So it's a good way to get your comment highlighted, as well as to help support the channel, which I really appreciate. Also, big shout out to our friends at Noble Knight Games. We've got some videos coming for them. I just got to get them edited. Both videos, I think it's going to be 2 videos. One, an interview with Dan Leader, who runs the place, and one, the warehouse tour, both of which are really cool, and I want to bring them to you, and I just got to get the editing done. So hopefully that will happen. It has now not happened on 2 consecutive weekends. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do it pretty soon. One of them is a pretty easy edit. The other one is not. So the warehouse tour is all kinds of little clips that have to be stitched together, and it's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. So before we go any further, let's say hello to Aaron Dennis, Alistair Logie, B. Red, and Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, Bill Simone, Board Gaming Geezer, Brent McCabe, Chad Canady, Charles Latour, Chet Bell, Craig Alexander, Doug Wednard, Dale Brady, Daniel Silverthorne, David Dell, Doug Blayart, Eric Goebel, Groucho Marks, HUN644, New, the legend himself, Fucko is here, James Whitmer, Jason W., Jeff Anderson, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Okabayashi, John Mogg, Jonathan Dyer, Joseph Hammond, Carl Crater from the Wargame Bootcamp, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Mark McNair, Mr. Mark Herman is here. Mark, thanks for stopping by. Marty Sample, Meandering Mike, Patchwork Pictures, Paul Dangle, Paw Paw, Perfidious Albion, Robert Maxey, Roger Hemseth, Roger J, Stacking Limit, Stigler is here. Tim Greenhaw, Tim Zales, Vicky, thanks for coming back out tonight. William Bird, Winterson, and Wolf Dog. Everybody, thanks for coming out this evening. So the Yankees are doing okay. The Yankees are doing okay. I watched some Yankees fan crying about how some third base error in the first inning, or something like that. Maybe that was something else. I don't know. But they were whining and they won, so they don't need to whine. They're probably going to the World Series if you had to put money on it. So, although who knows? We'll see. I did pick up, by the way, apropos of nothing in particular, I guess we will segue into the personal news. I guess I don't have any real news. I have not caught up with what's going on with that game. So, because I am here after all. So I am kind of paying attention. I did actually listen to game 1 of that series on the radio, believe it or not. So, I tend to agree with this, but this is one of the angles I'd like to examine. Actually, is a game maybe think about this for a bit. Is a game replayable just because it's a giant project? It takes a long time. So that is possible. All right, well, that's that. Flavius Belisarius, thank you so much for the support. It is much appreciated. So, Ed, thanks for stopping by. And I hope that everybody in Florida is less hosed than the people in North Carolina last week. I would be inclined to... Stigler, we've been actually doing better at that lately, most of the time. Last week, I think we got into it in about 20 minutes. So that is faster than usual. Let me put it that way. So what do I think of Burma as an OCS first game? I think it's not ideal because it's got some different supply considerations and different supply logic just based on the nature of the map and the terrain than most OCS games do. So it can set you up with some false expectations. That said, sure, you can just about any OCS game you can learn to game on because every OCS game, with the exception of Luzon, but the reason Luzon doesn't have like small digestible scenarios is the entire game is small and digestible. So in any case, Mark says that for him, replayability is more about whether there are different board states and paths to achieve them rather than more detail alone. Oh, so yeah, so I am going to say that I don't think detail adds to replayability at all. And it might be a deterrent, at least for some people, in fact, to replayability. If people find like it's doing the game experience is like doing their taxes, most people aren't going to like that. I tend to be pretty forgiving of that kind of game, but not everybody feels that way. So there's that. OCS Luzon, on the other hand, is a really good introduction, and it is still available. Did it already? Son of a bitch! I don't have any way to fix it other than to restart OBS, which I can't do in StreamYard. So because then if I drop OCS, then StreamYard will pick up the camera. So I guess we're doing without that again. Yeah, sorry about that. We get the ticker on though, so there's that. Sorry for the couple of folks watching on Twitch. Welcome to technology. So let's hope everybody I was concerned about Brant because he's in North Carolina, but he's in the part of North Carolina that it wasn't underwater. So that's good, but part of North Carolina was underwater, which is not good. So the player aids, I really want Multiman to make the player aids available as downloads. Those player aids are terrific. I'm not talking about the Luzon specific stuff. I'm talking about all the flowcharts and stuff for working out supply and all that stuff. Those are super duper helpful for as reference sheets for people learning the game. So Tim Zales, favorite replay situations are Barbarossa and Folded Gap. I would be inclined to agree, but are there specific... Well, you did name two specific games, Russia Besieged from Compass and presumably NATO from Compass as well. So you can thank Mr. Chip Saltzman for the general outstandingness of the Luzon player aids. I believe Chip had been working on those for quite a while. So Chad Kennedy bought them just for the player aids, and SG mentions that they're really well done, which of course I agree. So, Cardboard Conflict, welcome back to the show. Played small games that he thinks are a couple plays and no interest in playing anymore, so link their physical size isn't always part of the issue for replayability. I kind of feel like size or heft, and by heft in this case, I kind of just mean how long it takes to play and how much space it takes up, and in other words, how big of a project it is. A game like that can feel... I think at least there's a logic by which it might feel more replayable because it is just by the nature of the kind of game that it is, something you're not going to like immediately set it up and play it again after you've finished playing it the first time, right? I mean, this is the Mark McNair. This is the question: is what helps to make games replayable? Now, I don't think it's strictly speaking enjoyability because there's a whole bunch of games that I think are pretty good games that were fun to play, but I don't consider them super to be replayable. Frankly, I think the Twilight Struggle is one of those things for me. I recognize that many people will disagree with that position because people have played the absolute pants out of Twilight Struggle, but I got just kind of frankly just tired of it. So it's a terrific game. And it has, I think, brought some new folks into wargaming, both as players and as designers. But for me, I didn't think like the replayability was all that high. Once you kind of memorize the way the scoring works and the way the deck is built, I feel like you've kind of learned everything there is to learn from Twilight Struggle. Not that those are the only things that game teaches, but you'll absorb the rest of that along the way, the road to memorizing the deck, as it were, right? So, variety is also, Drew, thanks for stepping by. Variety is also, I think, a significant factor, right? There are people for whom one game is enough, or at least one war game, right? I mean, I could actually do this because ASL Oktoberfest is coming up. Just kind of buzz through there and take like a quick poll. What other games do those folks play? Because those are the pretty hardcore ASL people, right? And ASL is one of those games that is considered by a lot of people to have high replayability. But that's, I don't know that it's a cheat, but the fact is that there is an essentially limitless number of ASL scenarios. And that's why it's so replayable, right? There's an absolutely absurd number of different combinations of historical and or hypothetical events, and the various orders of battle and the rules and all that, right? There's an uncountable, let's say, number of different combinations of those things. And therefore, I think it's understandable if somebody who plays a lot of ASL just never really gets tired of playing ASL, right? And Brant touches on something very similar here as well. Now, see, I'm actually, my inclination is to tackle this topic outside of the scope of scenario selection, right? Because I think, as somebody already pointed out, and I already responded to, I think OCS games are generally pretty replayable. But are you replaying them because you're replaying all of the many scenarios, which are invariably there, right? Carl Fung, thanks for stopping by. Or are you mostly playing one of the same 2 or 3 scenarios? Because, I mean, Third Winter, which I think we've played like 4 times now, that's not true. So we played, there's a Second SS Panzer Corps scenario that was one of the last scenarios in the playtest pool that we played, and we did kind of fix it. And that, I think we played twice. And I'm not counting that in the 4 times we've played. The other times we've played where it's been a big project, we have always played either the September campaign scenario or the January campaign scenario. They're both really very big games that will take a long time to play, right? One's just starting halfway in or thereabouts. So I'm going to, Flavius Belisarius, thanks again. I think he's right here. It does feel to me more like a game than a simulation, but there isn't anything wrong with that necessarily, right? All of the games that we talk about, everything on the shelf behind me and everything in giant piles of trash waiting in the other room for me to get sorted out, all of those things exist on a spectrum of notional simulation at one end and notional game on the other. And there are no examples of war games anyway, that are just strictly simulations or strictly games or whatever, right? It's a matter of where a specific game that you might be talking about falls on that dial. And, well, talk to Tony Burkett, who's pretty much working on it. It's not going to be the entire, well, I don't know, maybe we'll see how far Tony gets with it. But, at the moment, you can play a huge chunk of the East Front. And once the Hero City is out, by that time, of course, Forgotten Battles, which has just made its pre-order number over at MMP's website, by the way, you'll be able to play the entire East Front, literally from Leningrad to Crimea for September 43 to, I think it's April or May of 44. So that's not giving you the entire Eastern Front for the entire time, because these are headquarters. Because there's a lot of drift. I mean, the front will move back and forth a lot, right? So that at OCS's scale, that is non-trivial to get on a map, and very much not easy to put on a map that you can actually reach to the middle of. So, I wish I was going, but, well, you know, my wife reminded me that the November thing is coming, and I could use all the head start that I can get, because I have the beard of a 14-year-old terrorist, Amish terrorist at that. So as it grows out, it will look progressively more and more hobo-like, I assure you. So, Tony from Tony's Board Life, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, I mean, these none of these like words, that these labels that we put on war games or really anything else they're almost never binary things where it either is this thing or it isn't this thing. It always falls somewhere in the middle. It might be more on one side than the other, in which case maybe fewer people, but nobody are arguing about which side of the spectrum it falls on, right? Perfidious Albion says, fun part with the classic first squad leader scenario, guards counterattack. The updated ASL version. Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree with this. And in fact, we were talking about doing something like that, of taking one of the ASL squad leader scenarios and playing it in both versions of the game, both squad leader and advanced squad leader. But then again, I'm not going to conduct this experiment because I don't own squad leader anymore. And I don't need it. I know I did a short on it, and it's a really important game in the history of wargaming. But I do feel like, regardless of how Renegade Games feels about it, I do kind of feel like time has passed it by. I think the evolution of squad leader into advanced squad leader was the correct path for that game, and it is a trajectory that it was already on with the expansions that squad leader was getting. I mean, remember, they didn't just decide to do advanced squad leader to chisel money out of people. They decided to do advanced squad leader because it was a big mess at that point. So, isn't a Civ 7 coming out soon? Did I hear that correctly? Am I remembering that correctly? So, yeah, this is frequently what I do get, actually, is that nobody believes it is a real beard. It appears to be some kind of filth. So as Brand points out, East Coast folks not headed to Aslock. Aslock, for those who don't know, is ASL Oktoberfest. It is in the Cleveland. I'm not sure exactly where it is anymore, but it's in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and it was at one point, and maybe still is, the largest ASL gathering on the planet. And it was pulling, I don't know, 150 or 200 people or something like that. That sounds about right. We have actual A-bomb counters here. One for Fat Man and one for Little Boy. There are also PT boat counters. So remember when I was joking about we need a counter for PT 109? Well, this has that. So, as well as everything else. I am somewhat jealous of folks who can do this. I'm not this kind of player. I will get sick of a game if I play it too much. Now, games I really like, I can keep coming back to, but that isn't necessarily a situation where I'm going to start playing it again right after I finish playing it the first time, right? I am unfamiliar with as John Longshore and is John Longshore talking about Ara History Untold. I don't know what this is. Obviously, I have to check it out. So. Well, it's $60, I can tell you that. Looks like a Civ builder. I normally like those kind of games, not necessarily Civilization specifically, but, well, maybe. So, I mean, I do tend to play this up a little bit, but then again, we got like actual wargaming happening here too. So, for folks who are in a less fortunate situation or a less fortunate area, then by all means be jealous. So, because we have it okay here in that we have actual wargaming happening. And not everybody does. Not everybody does. Not everybody is in quite so fabulous a place for wargaming. or tabletop RPGs. Remember that Columbus specifically is an overgrown college town, so there tends to be lots of folks available to play games there in general. So, well, apparently this is something I should look at, except that I am cheap and it is $60. So I will pay attention, and when it goes on sale, I will consider it. So, wait a minute. Civ, did Civ 6, is Civ 6 not turn-based? Because all the previous Civ games were turn-based, and normally Twitch reflexes are not particularly helpful for turn-based games. But maybe they added some element that makes that useful. I don't know. Like I said, I have at the moment, I have Civ 4, 5, and 6 on Steam, and have put a total of, between the three games, probably 5 hours into all three of them put together. I just find that Civ doesn't really work for me due to, I guess, what I'll call ahistoricity is not really the right way to describe the issue I have with Civ. I will instead describe it as a silliness problem. If it was, say, for example, Age of Empires, the first Age of Empires, which was a real-time strategy game that was broadly similar. It's like a Civ builder type of deal. And I had fun with that, but they didn't do anything foolish like putting, Abraham Lincoln is in charge in 6000 B. I mean, that's dumb. Why do we do that? So that to me gets in my way for enjoying the Civilization games. But not everybody feels the same way about that. So, and I'm not saying they are bad games. I'm saying that gets in my way when I consider playing Civ 4, 5, or 6. Remember that Civ 4 was narrated by Leonard Nimoy, which is pretty great choice. I want to say, what's her name? Poop. I can't remember who's doing the narration in the new one. So, Nuclear Gandhi. Yeah, I mean, it's just goofy. So, and there are other things you could say about Civ, like the UI and things like that. But, I mean, those are things that Civ is far from the only example of games with shady UIs. Let me put it that way. I would agree that Civ anything is not really a war game, but I mean, I am not necessarily unbiased in saying that. Let me put it that way. How many replays? Here's a good question. What do we think is good replay? I mean, I know that there's people that play, let me restart the example here. So if you talk to like folks that go to WBC and go to one tournament, they might play 20 games of that particular game that the tournament is about at WBC, right? And that's maybe it's Civ 5. I don't know. I get them mixed up. So one of them is narrated by Leonard Nimoy. So, Mr. It's a exceptionally efficient narration. So yeah, my normal goal for, here we go. My normal goal for counter organization and indeed stuff organization for games is to expedite setup. And it is a factor, right? I mean, we're going to be careful next time we decide we're playing Case Blue, because it takes 20 man hours to set the thing up. Then again, we're going to go to Winterfest. Gwendolyn Christie, that's who I'm thinking of for the new one. I don't know anything about the new one. I don't know when it's coming out, but I heard that. So, I mean, that is not a selling point either way for me, but I don't know. I'll buy it when it's $5. Let me put it that way. So until that point, I think that this evening I would like more whiskey. I didn't pour an incredibly generous pour the first time, though, so there's that. So we'll see how far we get with this thing tonight. It is sort of slated to get played. The other thing that is slated to get played, let's see if I can pick this up and show you without destroying anything, is the thing I have been clipping over the weekend. Screaming Eagles. TCS Screaming Eagles. We are finally going to give TCS a serious crack. We have dallied with it on a couple of occasions, but nothing resembling an entire game of it. So, who's Will Morgan? I mean, good for Will Morgan, I guess. I mean, somebody mentioned Gary Grigsby's War in the East. I have War in the East 1. I haven't picked up War in the East 2 yet, but it has been pretty consistently on sale for it for basically the price of a regular game, because it's $80 ordinarily. So I am not sure when I will pick that up, but I will surely get it at some point. I was pretty impressed with the first Gary Grigsby's War in the East. I don't know about first, but the earlier one that's available in Steam. Because there was an earlier Gary Grigsby's War in Russia, I think was what it was called, game, which I played back in the day and which I thought was pretty bad. So now I do have War in the West, which I just was kind of baffled by, mostly with the air system. I felt like I could have handled the ground system after playing War in the East. But the air system, I was just kind of baffled by. I should probably pick up War in the East 2, to my understanding, more or less brings in the much more elaborate War in the West air system to War in the East. So, well, yeah, no kidding. We've been saying this for years. So, it's going to be a checklist item for us. We have not paid. I have not played an actual, what I will characterize as an actual game of TCS up to this point. Like I said, we have noodled with it. We set Goose Green up, for example, and played that for an evening, but we didn't finish a game or anything like that. And we ignored the op sheets, which is, to my mind, is kind of the beating heart of TCS. So I would strongly prefer to play with the op sheets. That's another reason not to play with a couple of the previous games in the series that say don't use op sheets. But in at least a couple of those cases, whatever the Crete one is called, there's an option floating around somewhere to use op sheets. So I don't really see the point in playing TCS without them, to be honest. So you know what I found, though? I mean, I will agree with John Longshore's statement here. He says that the Grigsby game strikes him as too much when you're a theater commander and have to decide which unit gets a platoon of Mark IV HS. I will agree with that. However, I will point out that I feel like that can be played just as effectively and enjoyably without monkeying with the individual constituent components of your units. I certainly managed to do that with the first War in the East. So I think Barry Sprapless asks what's next for TCS. I think we had like a multi-pack of Marine battles was, I think, the last thing I heard about. And I'm up for that, to be honest. I mean, it depends on the topics, right? I mean, we might get, I don't know what we'll get. So if it's Vietnam, though, yeah, I think I could get behind that. And that's probably going to be my only Vietnam tactical game. I don't consider Silver Bayonet to be a tactical game. So, or a Hot Dry Season, whenever that is actually available, which should happen. It's just, the folks in, Snafu Store, have not really done a game like that before. So they're going to need a bit of time to work on it. So I did not actually pre-order, Red Dust Rebellion. I will almost certainly get it, but I will maybe play it first. I don't know. We'll see. I will have ample opportunity to play it. If worst case scenario, I will bully the Players Aid into playing it at Bucket Game Fest. So there we go. There's your answer. 5 battles in Vietnam: Drang, Operation Starlight, Operation Pegasus, Hamburger Hill, and Duk Lap. That sounds great. I'll totally grab that. So I agree. I'd love to see the GD games continued as well. I've got all 3 of them now, and I've got and it's your fault, by the way, Doug. You did a damn video on TCS. and I bought a bunch of TCS games, some of which for the third time. So, yeah, kind of. That, I mean, and Red Dust Rebellion looks pretty fun to me. So, so it's Doug's fault. I don't know what we're doing for Winterfest yet, but it sounds like we are at least talking about the idea of OCS, which, hey, whatever. I haven't actually played much OCS this year, and indeed last year as well. So getting back to OCS would be a welcome change for me, I think. Not that I have made a decision, but it is what it is. Doug, thanks for stopping by the way. So, and I agree with Doug on this too, by the way. I think TCS has enough going for it. Given wisdom in the choice of games to do, choice of topics to cover, I think you could get a thriving game system and audience out of TCS. It has kind of clung on to life over the years, but remember, other than the two Ziploc games that Doug mentions here, Ariete and Goose Green, we haven't really seen a TCS game in quite a long time. So I am looking, well, I shouldn't say looking at this. I am aware of this, and it sounds intriguing. Let me put it that way. So Drew asks, can you jump to the end game without playing the preceding part, and how much does it warp the situation? So, I mean, unless a game is, unless the situation doesn't lend itself to that, or unless the game's development is kind of half-baked, I think generally this is true, but you just pick a scenario that starts later. Now, we have seen examples of half-baked development. The best one I am aware of, well, the one that springs to mind immediately because I've had to live with this problem, is the Gauss Atlantic Wall, which suffers from a really not great scenario selection and a number of not great learning curve scenarios. In addition, there is no June 7th, I keep complaining about this, there is no June 7th scenario. This is a huge problem because it means that either you have to fudge the landings or you have to play through the dreadful Beach Landings mini game. Which I think is just a huge drag. No one I have ever spoken to actually enjoys it or thinks it's any good. And it takes friggin' forever. The air landing mini game that you do on the morning of the 6th, on the other hand, I consistently find engaging. It takes a few hours to do it, but I mean, I'm okay with that. You at least have things to do and decisions to make. So Black Wednesday is friggin' humongous. Before diving into TCS, I would recommend going to look at the Tabletop's Edge, Doug's kind of overview of the entire line of TCS games, and make your selection after having absorbed that information. I found it very useful in terms of deciding which TCS games I would like to play, and not at all useful in deciding which TCS games I was not going to buy again. So, because there was a bunch of those. The good news with that is that a good number of the TCS games are available quite inexpensively on the secondary market. Unlike, say, OCS games, which tend to be quite expensive. BCS games, that might be the case. I haven't really looked because I have them all. And SCS games, some of the out-of-print SCS games can go for decent change as well. Black Wednesday is East Front Spanish Blue Division. It's 4 maps. It's really quite large. So thank you, Brant. Much appreciated. I literally check an additional box. What is a bit of a headache though is when I set the stream up, which is usually, I never want to set the streams up like a week in advance. I know I do sometimes, but that is because there will be a prearranged thing with somebody. Just setting the stream to go to Facebook is trivial in theory because it's just another checkbox when I'm setting it up. In practice, however, usually the setup for Facebook fails and I have to keep hammering on the button, and that's irritating because I've always got more stuff to do, right? So, Phil, thanks for stopping by. So bear in mind, though, that that TCS has evolved considerably since its early games, and Bloody 110 is one of the very early games. So that might be worth a look, an updated look. Let me put it that way. And as far as I know, Carl can correct me if I'm wrong here, but as far as I know, other than maybe Force Eagles War, I think you can play basically any TCS game with the current rules. You might have to figure out what the markers are, but yeah, and there we go. So listen to Doug on this. He is my go-to TCS guru if I need a TCS guru. Because, like, he's played it, and I haven't, so. James Whitmer, Jeff Beeler I'm sure has Canadian Crucible already. That was one that we also considered. That was actually the final two choices was actually Screaming Eagles, which, by the way, is Market Garden, but it's the 101st Airborne, and they're on the defensive against a German counterattack. So it looks pretty interesting from that standpoint. Ooh, yeah, that's a good point. I guess you could make them. I mean, you've probably seen it in the background, the extra jar of counters. And I actually stripped this jar out because it was overfilled and filled up some plastic trays, but with sorted counters. So, but it was going to be Screaming Eagles or Canadian Crucible. So, in general, I have generally found that the games have good replayability, but I'll also mention that, we've played a lot of them, right? With the exception of TCS, which is kind of the one Dean Essig series that I personally haven't played any of, or at least only a trivial amount of. I find that the replayability feels high, but it might be because we've played this OCS game. Let's go play a different OCS game, right? We're still playing OCS. And in fact, and Carl does in fact clarify that other than Force Eagles War, which was kind of its own like sub-series, it never went anywhere, for modern stuff, everything is compatible with the new rules, which of course reminds me that I need to print out the new rules into new charts for the thing that we'll be playing on Wednesday. I probably don't need the charts, but I should definitely print the rules. I anticipate that our entire session is going to be set up. So which is fine, but it is. I'm not sure what game we're talking about. Oh, Force Eagles War. Okay, we're very good. This does happen. I mean, this is one reason why I don't keep stuff in the shrink wrap without some kind of reason to keep it in the shrink wrap. And I don't buy games because I want to speculate or, make it into an investment. I buy games because I want to play them, at least theoretically. Right. Speaking of that, I will probably do the announcement on the new Noble Knight campaign next week. We'll see. I will also probably not do a show on November 11th, which is the day I will be recovering from SD HistCon. So it is very likely that there will be no counterclipping show that evening. Just saying. Maybe I'll do one later in the week, but maybe not. I don't know. I tried that once and it was not that big of a that big of a thrill. So I have never bought a game because I want to look, just because I want to look at it. Now, again, and I've been very transparent about this. I am sometimes fooling myself when I'm saying, oh yeah, I want to play that. And then I get it home and I pour through it a little bit and I say, I don't know, I'm not going to play this. Or, this is where it's really dangerous, is I will be super interested in playing it, but then 3 years will go by and I haven't played it yet. So I think, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to play this now. And my interest will have waned so that I will get, maybe, but I will be doing stuff for Veterans Day. So that is the reason why. We'll see. I have not made that decision. A good organizer can help replayability? Sure, yeah, because in the sense that it aids organization. And Marty's tells me that the people who really are good at that game can play it in just a couple hours too. So there's that. I'm aware that it is Veterans Day weekend. Let me put it that way. So, yeah, so this is, if you buy it, I mean, if you buy a Force Eagles War now and the count or whatever, the counters are miscut, you're just hosed. You're going to have to get another copy. But fortunately, I don't think that many people really want Force Eagles War. So there's that. Good question. Panzer Division Lair. This is a good question. My supposition is no, inherently. And I think that, and this might be part of the reason why Twilight Struggle wore out for me, is because you start to like learn the deck. And at that point, I feel like there's not much more to the game, right? I don't feel like Paths of Glory is quite that sensitive to deck knowledge, but I won't say that it isn't at all. Were punched on the backside. No, they were not. So I don't know if that's a difference. Now, one thing I have seen, and this is, I think this is the case with Vakdam Rhine. Well, you know what? Maybe they are, and I didn't notice. Hold on. I didn't think so. Certainly doesn't look like it. Nope, definitely not. Front says front, and that's the side that was on top when they punched it. I got pieces falling out here, and I don't want to lose anything, so we're going to be careful about putting this back on the shelf. One thing I noticed, though, is that the backs are upside down. And what I mean by that is when you are flipping the counter to its backside, the modern Wargame, in almost every case, you flip by rotating from side to side. You rotate it across the vertical axis. Whereas in that Vakdam Rhine and in the Decision Vakdam Rhine, you rotate across the horizontal axis, so you flip top to bottom. I hate that. And it's just because I'm used to doing it the other way. So, but in a lot of these big games, you are using counter orientation to tell you something, right? You're saying, I'm going to rotate this counter because I have already moved this stack, right? And if I'm confused all the time about what the orientation is because I flip some counters over, that's going to create issues. And I would rather not have those issues, to be completely honest about it. I got to be honest, the soapbox is hard to get. The flat's not terribly difficult to get, nor is it, I mean, it's expensive, but it's not, it's not bone-chillingly offensive. Incidentally, I'm not sure if I said this during the Fantasy War Games show or not. I did order Divine Right from Pungo Games, a division of Worthington Publishing. So, hasn't not arrived yet. It'll probably arrive anytime. I think I ordered it on Friday, actually. So, you know what? No, I didn't. I ordered it last Monday because it was maybe it was the Fantasy Games show. So, this is possible, but can we think of any war games that do this? I mean, yeah. Mr. President does this. You'll and most coin games do this. You'll like pick a random assortment of cards and then kind of insert the scoring cards at intervals. So you'll kind of do that. The giant no, I didn't. I just ordered the game. I don't need the giant neoprene game mat. That's the kind of stuff that I have to figure out where to store. I've already got a couple of neoprene game mats. So it doesn't, I won't say that it is I mean, it is a classic, right? Vakdam Rhine is a classic. It is, but just because it's a classic doesn't necessarily mean it holds up well against today's games on the same topic, right? So, example, Avalon Hills Africa Corps, absolutely a classic. If you were playing in 1965, or frankly up through about 75, chances are really high that you played Avalon Hills Africa Corps. I don't think that holds up that well today. So, and as Mark points out, there's a bunch of different ways to kind of organize a CDG, right? In some cases, everybody plays out of the same deck. In other cases, there are two different decks. In still other cases, there are like staged decks where Twilight Struggle does this, Paths of Glory does this, where when a certain condition is met, or maybe when a particular time is reached, you will add more cards to the deck or swap the deck out entirely. Empires, I keep doing this. Nations in Arms is like that too. You'll add different cards when you reach the different periods in the game. So the point with this, with Africa Core, is that it is a classic, and if you were playing inside a sort of generational window, then chances are really high that you played it. That said, does it hold up? Is it as good as a modern game on that same topic, France 41, for example? No, I don't think it is. So the people could disagree with that, and that's fine, but I just don't think that it is. And I think anybody that thinks it is might be talking from nostalgia. I, too, suffer from nostalgia, but I like to think, at least, that I don't necessarily make my gameplay or game buying decisions based on nostalgia. Somebody, on the other hand, accessories are a different story entirely. So I actually had a short that was basically this, and I didn't release it because it sounded pissy, and I didn't want to sound pissy in a short. So there was somebody I saw an ad on Facebook, I think, for like some D&D t-shirts that were like, old type D&D that were really pretty cool. And I'm like, I wouldn't mind having one of those. And I have a D&D t-shirt, right? And an old school-ish D&D t-shirt. But that doesn't mean I want to play the game, right? I have grown past D&D. So that sounds very snobbish when I put it that way. And I don't mean it to be snobbish, but it's going to be snobbish, and that's just the way it is. So I have to be comfortable with that. Let's face it. This is kind of the problem, but remember, it's not just Africa Core that does this. We had the same thing happen in War in the Desert. So it comes down to that last 2-to-1 die roll. Maybe you'll get a 3-to-1 out of it if you're really good, or you've been lucky up to that point. But it all comes down to that final die roll for Tobruk, and maybe you get lucky with that, but chances are you don't, because it's a 2-to-1 attack. Remember, it's a fairly crappy attack, and a 3-to-1 attack is usually not that great either, and it certainly isn't in Europa. So, ooh, this is a good point. Good point too. There are some games like this where you have like a top and a bottom side. Trying to think of a game that I've played like that, because I have played at least one or two of them, and I can't think of one off the top of my head. But this is a good point. Sometimes there are multiple options on a card. And in fact, there are coin games like this where one side you orient the card one way and it favors one side, orient the card another way and it favors the other side. You could play it either way. But it is clear based on who you're playing, which option you're probably going to pick too. All right, so MIDI Doctors says that none of the famous monster operational SPI games from that first wave are not replayers. Okay, so I believe I'm understanding this to mean that all of the famous monster operational SPI games from that period are games with decent replay value. And I'm not positive that's the case, but I will tell you that I think several of them absolutely are. War in Europe, for example, I think stands up pretty well. I will play War Between the States again as well. People played the pants off Terrible Swift Sword as well. Maybe something like Bloody April or NATO Division Commander. NATO Division Commander, my hurdle with that is more topical than it is nature of the system, because it is a refereed double-blind thing. So I did have to. Okay, so maybe I misunderstood the statement then. But I think War in Europe is, and like I said, I think the next war is, and Fabrizio Vianello can vouch for that because those guys played that for years. Campaign for North Africa. You'd have to be the exact right person to want to play that multiple times. Let me put it that way. Oh, see, this is, but this is nostalgia, right? This is completely understandable, and I sympathize because this happens to me too. But this is nostalgia, right? That you're playing something that you played back in the day, and it therefore recalls that. But I don't feel like you can ever really recapture the magic, right? Yeah, TSS Grand Tactical. And one can certainly decide that you'd rather play 3 Days of Gettysburg, the modernized version, than the original TSS. But lots of folks played lots of TSS too. So, and as well, see, this is one of the reasons why it's a classic, right? Because generally speaking, those Avalon Hill games from the 60s, really 50s to the early 70s were really easy and approachable games, right? Yeah, I'd say so. Stratomatic football, baseball, whatever sports games, right? So, Gettysburg 65. I do think that Bulge I do think that Bulge 65 holds up better of those games from the 60s. Well, I won't say all of them because Jutland I think holds up pretty well. Bulge 65 I think holds up okay, but and that was the original too. Of those, that's probably the best between that and Africa Corps and Gettysburg. Gettysburg's a little more complicated because it is a different game every time they redid it. So I find it, I agree with Manry Mike on this. I find it generally the latter. It's just not, you can't really recapture the magic because part of the magic is it was 3 a.m. and I'm completely wired on Mountain Dew and we're playing Rollmaster and I can't do that anymore. So that was an integral part of the experience at the time. Hold on a second here. So Stigler is bashing the all-time SPI Classic scrimmage. Which I have acquired. So I would like to give it a whirl. I will not make any promises about making content out of it, nor will I make any promises about it being any good. It does not have a great reputation, but if you think about it, treating American football as a war game is an intriguing idea. And Jim Dunnigan was a genius, and it is a Dunnigan design, so is a genius because Mr. Dunnigan is still with us. So, hey, I didn't even soil your retinas by displaying the Decision Games product in the background. So I will expect a modest check in the mail anytime. The magic is in the memory. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is right out of a George Carlin skit. So. So on that topic, SD Hist is a go. I've been saying that for quite a while, but I've actually bought the plane tickets today. So I have had a hotel reservation for like 2 months. But today, I looked at extending the hotel reservation and it was going to cost $500. So no, we will not be doing that. So Brant, thanks for stopping by. This sounds like it's a migraine waiting to happen to me. I don't know. Maybe. Now, I'm not saying that Scrimmage doesn't have problems too, right? But, it is what it is. It was not expensive, and it is an interesting game from the past, and I like to check out interesting games from the past. And if I hate it and want to sell it, then I will probably get back the $10 that I spent on it. So, You should. It might actually be too late. I think they actually have sold out. But SD HistCon. So there's that. Remember, SPI did a baseball too, right? Right? Yeah, I thought SPI did a baseball game too. So now I played Status Pro baseball and Status Pro football from Avalon Hill and enjoyed those for what they are worth. But nowadays, I think so I'm going to clip one more counter here and then pull something else out that I'm going to actually have to exit the room very briefly for. So it is extremely easy to get a copy of Scrimmage for not very much money. So if you're looking for a copy of Scrimmage, just go look on eBay. Nobody really wants it. The same thing applies to Tito, by the way, and that's another I think an interesting game that I would like to try at some point. It was $1. I got it from Noble Knight for $1. So I have recently become baseball has returned to my radar. Let me put it that way. I was just not paying attention to sports. A lot of this is just time management, folks. Let me put it that way. But I have been, like I said, I actually listened to about the second half of the Brewers and Mets. I was rooting for the Brewers because Bob Uecker was calling the game. I think Tito is just ahead of its time, right? Now, and that's not to say Tito's a flawless masterpiece, right? But I do think Tito's ahead of its time, and that's why a lot of people poo-pooed it at the time. I don't know that I heard that was at Origins, but I do know that this happened. Maybe Mark can speak to that. He was on that team. So, it would be interesting if there were game stats. Hold on a second. I don't think I'm going to get an unboxing video out of this, so I'll talk about it here. Don't worry, there won't be an actual flip through of product. But I tend to pay pretty close attention to war games. I don't catch everything that's coming out. Occasionally stuff surprises me. And I pay pretty close attention to specific range bands in RPGs. So Traveler and whatever Chaos Eve's doing, I pay attention to. I know what's coming. Like Euro-style board games, no idea. Generally, unless it was big or I know people that are playing it or something like that, I have no idea. Thus was Lords of Baseball. This is from Mr. B Games, from whom I ordered it last week. And it looks pretty neat. It is a baseball management sim with Euro-style mechanics. So there's that. Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah, scrimmage is cheap, man. So now this is a different Alan Salazar. This is a good point, but this is kind of a different question, right? Because if you're a subscriber to S&T Magazine, you're probably thinking you're going to get some kind of military history game, and then Scrimmage shows up. You're like, what the fuck is this? So I think that's a completely understandable reaction. But that said, getting into carriers now. Remember, there's two different, or at least somewhat different versions of Avalon Hill's Chancellorsville, but it's not a game that is known to hold up super duper well. Gilbert Collins has a video on it. I would have to revisit that video to tell you which version he was looking at the time. But this might be intriguing, and that's kind of what Lords of Baseball is. It's set in like 1912 to 1917 or something like that. So you like run a baseball franchise for 5 years, and you can, improve the stadium and stuff like that. However, here's what I don't like. I had to buy the expansions. So, because the Cleveland team is in the expansions. So, and I can't not have a Cleveland team. That does not feel okay to me. So, I can't play the Yankees. I can root for the Yankees against the Red Sox. That is permissible. So, there is no defense occurring here for the record. It is an intriguing novelty piece that I would like to try to play at some point just to see how it is. And to see what I think works with it and what I think doesn't work with it. So They have missed there are no team names in the game, actually. They're just city names. And if I were doing that, I would have probably done something pretty similar. Well, there's some kind of weird symbol. Yep, that is an actual symbol. That is the air capacity of the carrier. So France 40. So this is the SPI France 1940 that went made its way to Avalon Hill eventually. I assume that's the game we're talking about here. That's a tough game model. Tough topic to model. I got to be honest, and I've talked about that before. Ooh, Will GM for Food says tactical systems are best for replayability. I mean, I am not about to say that there aren't people for whom this is true. I suspect that I am probably not one of them necessarily, because my tastes tend away from tactical games, to be completely honest about it. It never sounds like this, right? But I could play World War II tactical, operational, strategic. I'm cool, okay? When we start talking about like Napoleonics or Civil War, once again, tactical, operational, strategic, that's pretty cool. But am I going to play like a tactical 7 years war game? Probably not. No. But if you're happy with like the big genres in wargaming, then yeah, maybe that's true. And I've already talked about, I am not trying to say that scrimmage doesn't suck. I am trying to say that I'd like to experience the suckage firsthand. Let me put it that way. There are a bunch of, so there's a GMT. So there's I think it's a Ted Racer game, Case Yellow. That game's got a pretty good reputation. There's France 40 from Mark Simonich, which is the one in that series that I don't have and stupidly didn't buy. I'm going to have to rant about this, Jeff. But there have been at least 2 or 3 France 1940 games out of GMT alone. So this is the name I was rooting for when they were changing this team name. At least there's history behind this. Guardians is stupid, and the logo is the worst logo in the history of logos. So notionally, Cleveland Guardians are named after the Guardians of Transportation, which are these 8 huge Art Deco pillars erected in like the 20s or 30s or something like that on the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge that kind of cuts through over the Cuyahoga River that cuts through downtown Cleveland. In principle, I think this is an interesting idea, but then they made the logo a stupid bug-looking baseball with a dumb-looking hat on it, and not the cool Art Deco Guardians of Transportation. I don't know what they were thinking. Was there like an IP issue that prevented them from doing that? I'm going to have to make video about this, aren't I? I'm going to have an entire scrimmage series. In fact, I'm going to start recruiting for a scrimmage league just to aggravate Stigler. So I'm actually more intrigued by Lords of Baseball. Scrimmage is going to sit for a while because it was $10, frankly. This was $80. New from the publisher. So, and the expansions, I think, are 10 each. Something like, maybe, no, not 10, 20 or 30 each, something like that. Well, they have, some people say this. I mean, it's just Art Deco. It's just that's something that the Andrand movies share with the Guardians of Transportation. They are really cool Art Deco statues. So I'm not arguing with this. I just wish they would have picked something slightly different, or at least had a cool logo. And again, the logo's right on the bridge. Why not use that? So I will agree. I don't know about Case Yellow specifically, but I will tell you that I think that, we back-to-back played Beyond the OCS Beyond the Rhine, and I feel like you could do that with Blitzkrieg Legend as well, which is the France 1940 OCS game, which is my choice for game on that topic. So the folks in Cleveland have been making fun of this at least as long as anybody else has. Possibly the most respected microbrewery in Cleveland, the Great Lakes Brewing Company, which it's a pretty cool place. The beer's good, and you can go, the food's good at the restaurant too. It's kind of right around the corner from the West Side Market, which is another cool place in Cleveland. So they actually did a pale ale, the Burning River Pale Ale, which is pretty good if you like pale ales, meaning it's got tons and tons of hops, American style pale ale. McFudpucker, thanks for stopping by. So they had the hockey team is currently called the Lake Erie Monsters. I don't know who came up with this, but this is why I was happy to see Detroit make the playoffs, even though I'm hoping they lose now, because Detroit is a baseball team that gets punched in the face a lot, and from a city that gets punched in the face a lot, and it's good to see them doing okay. So I'm happy to see them in the playoffs. I've never taken Amtrak to or from Cleveland, so is that actually true? Yeah, that is true, actually. I think you can still buy merch with Chief Wahoo on it, by the way. I'm not sure that stuff gets sold in the official team shop, but I think you can. I think that's still available. Just based on what you see people wearing, that doesn't mean anything. So, the Cleveland baseball stadium built for an Olympics that never happened. Are we talking about the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium? Because that was a shitty stadium, frankly. And the Indians were always second-class citizens, as it were, in that stadium. It was the Browns facility, and it was a better facility for football than it was for baseball. But it wasn't that great a facility for football either. So you know what? You guys have tremendous sympathy as a person from Cleveland. The folks in Oakland have tremendous sympathy from you, and you are just gonna have the same thing happen to you as happen to us, except you don't get an extra bonus team that keeps the name. So the owner of the Oakland A's is a horrific owner. Who has basically, so imagine if you've seen Major League, imagine the owner in Major League who has done everything they can to literally walk in the stadium before the game and personally poop in the seats. I mean, everything was done to sabotage that team so that he could move it to Las Vegas. So Cleveland is not named for Grover Cleveland. It is named for Moses Cleveland. So oof, you will get in trouble around here for saying this, because Chrissy Hind and the Pretenders were from Akron, not Cleveland, and people from Akron will get very upset with you for saying that they were from Cleveland. So, and I'm not. The ownership of the Cleveland Browns is terrible too. So, I will agree with you, Stigler. They're great music. Well, it eventually got configured, but having gone to plenty of baseball games and a couple of football games in that stadium, it was a bad stadium. This is true. The Oakland people can just all become Giants fans. I'm sure they'll love that, but it's still lame for the folks in Oakland. So there's all kinds of Pretenders lyrics related to Chrissy Hines growing up in Northeast Ohio. So there you go. This is true. There were the Cleveland Rams, then they went to St. Louis, then they went somewhere else, and I can't keep track of it anymore. But they started out in Cleveland. There you go. Use the affiliate link. I hear they have copies of Scrimmage for $6. So where were the Warriors before? Weren't they in Sacramento or something like that? I got to tell you, I'm not the world's biggest basketball guy, so I don't actually know the answer to that question. I don't even care too much if the Cavaliers are doing well, and I haven't had to worry about that in some time. So the Warriors played in Oakland. Okay. I've never been to Oakland. I've been to San Francisco, so I might have known this. Despite me not being a big basketball fan. Winning time, and I know it takes its liberties with the facts too, but I thought that Winning Time on HBO was absolutely tremendous. Mark will get in trouble for doing this with the IP police, so I'm not going to ask for that. That said, if I'm ever over at his house, I'm going to ask to see it. So there's that. This is probably going to irritate the the Oakland people even more than saying Chrissy Hind was from Cleveland people. She was back here in Cuyahoga Falls maybe a couple of months ago, actually, for something, and there were some pictures on Facebook of her in front of her childhood home in Cuyahoga Falls, or Cuyahoga Falls, as the lyrics go. So it is infernally hot in here for reasons unknown. So I'd say not. Yeah, this is not worth your time, Mark, to get into litigation with whoever owns this intellectual property at this time. I'm not even sure who that is. The Conan IP has been through a couple of hands. At one point, I thought that Funcom bought it, but then that might have changed. I'm not sure. This is tricky. And if you flout it, you might get sued. And whether you are in the legal right or not, that is probably no good. Some of the original stories are in the public domain. And if what you would like to do is to republish the original stories as they were originally printed in the pages of Weird Tales magazine, then you will probably get away with this. If you want to do a game based on the IP, I strongly recommend against it. And definitely consult an intellectual property attorney first. So Windsor is, yeah, it kind of is, actually. It's Canadian, so you would assume it's North Detroit, but no, it is in fact South Detroit. It's been a while since I've been to the lovely city of Detroit. And I've been there, I think, twice. I went there for an SCA event. So, but other than that, I've been to Michigan a few times, but I've never been to Detroit other than that one trip, which we didn't see the city. I was like chained to a leatherworking table for an entire weekend. So, I liked the world book that they did. What was it called? Jeweled Thrones of the Earth, I think, was the Mongoose Conan world book. That was a really good book, and I liked it at the time, but I think the Modifius Conan game is better. They lost the license. Somebody else is doing another Conan RPG. We were at Blossom on July 4th, or for the fireworks celebration at July 4th, actually. It might have been in the Detroit suburbs, to be fair, but I've gone to SE events in downtown, not downtown, but in the city of Cleveland before, and in the city of Columbus before. So, consult an intellectual property attorney before deciding to do something commercial with this material is pretty much the end of my commentary on it. But I'm a big fan of the original stories, too. Modifius had the Conan RPG. They lost the license, and I don't know if it was pulled or if it just expired or what, but they had to liquidate all their inventory. So they do not have it anymore. So Monolith is Monolith the people that did the board game? It might be. I have taken no interest in that board game at all. I bought a couple of the remainder. I am wrong. Modifius did Jeweled Thrones of the Earth for the Conan RPG. There was a world booky type book for Mongoose Conan as well. So I Agree Day says Modifius sold it. I think they might have negotiated a little better exit strategy for the product, but I don't know. So, well, we'll get back to it sooner or later. I don't know. We've got Mickey Mouse, so what do you want? Remember, they don't just all suddenly flip, right? It depends on when they were first published. So, and I'd have to look. They started getting published in the 20s, so late 20s. So, and I'm not checking. So, okay. Yeah, I'm not. That doesn't even look very good to me. I've never seen anybody playing it. I've seen it in stores a couple of times. I don't know if it could be great. I have no idea, but I'm not sufficiently interested to go buy it sight unseen. Lords of Baseball, I admittedly wasn't totally sight unseen. I saw it on tables at WBC. But I was like, ooh, this looks cool. This looks like an Excel spreadsheet about managing baseball teams. I'm all over this. So very good. Eric Goebel, Battles in the East Volume 2 and Ardennes 2. So remember, you're going to get a Battles in the East Volume 3 sometime in pretty soon. Might even be before the end of the year. Check out the show that we did with Doc last week. So incidentally, tomorrow on the Chit Show, we will have the fine folks from Wharf Rat Games. That is Ryan Howman and Wes Crawford. We will have them as guests on the Chit Show, and we'll talk to them about all the kind of things that they have going on, which is quite a bit. The minis are cool. The tourist railroad trip, and I'm not sure what this is actually. I know there's a Cuyahoga Valley Railroad. I assume that's what you're talking about. And I've been on it, but it's been a while, like a long time. So now another one of those kind of signature games that to me feels like it has lots of replay value is I'm going to say World in Flames, but I think this series has been committed to up to volume 5, Stigler. I got to tell you, 3 will be out probably in December, and 4 will be out sometime in 2025. And I'm not sure when number 5 will be out. It might even be 2025, but I don't know. So anyway, I was going to use World in Flames as my example of high replayability, but really this is true of just about any strategic level World War II game that I would consider playing in the first place. So a game like A World at War would count. Even the TSR ones, the ETO and PTO, this thing counts, for example. Assuming I ever get finished clipping it. I have actually struggled much more with other games clipping them. This actually clips pretty easily. The counters are nice and square. They don't have center nibs. They don't require me to carve them off the sheets with an X-Acto knife. I prefer not having to deal with that. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually not backed up on the chat. However, it is time. It's actually overtime to hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsors of the Counter Clipping Show. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
So thanks, Noble Knight. And once again, there's an affiliate link in the video description that will give me a little bit of a kickback if you use the affiliate link to buy stuff from Noble Knight. Don't go crazy on my account, but if you're going to buy it anyway, use the affiliate link and I'll get a little bit of a kickback. And we'll talk about the next campaign next week. And I'm pretty sure I know what it is. There was an eBay auction for it, and I didn't get it, so I will just do it through Noble Knight instead. It'll be fine. You are not the first person to forget to use the affiliate link. So there's that true. You couldn't pay me to go to, well, you could pay me to go to Florida, but it would have to be substantial. This is, I will agree with John Longshore, but I will also stipulate that this is in the modern world of wargame publishing, this is basically always the case with every designer and publisher. It's really more about the designers and the teams that the designers themselves have put together. Tony happens to have his own people that he can help, get the play testing going on this stuff. And Tony knows what he's doing. So yeah, he is capable of even doing blind play testing. And frankly, Decision has been doing better with play testing over the last several years. We play tested Battles in the East Volume 1 for Decision. We were like the first people to have our hands on the thing. I don't know if our names are in the book or not. I didn't even check that. Pretty sure no, but I have reasons for suspecting that that's the case. Do I have some? No. Well, we'll figure it out sooner or later. We're going to have to probably dedicate a couple of additional counter trays to this, but there we go. That works. CVs, CVEs. And CVL's probably... Wait, did I mix these up? No, I did not. So, yeah, Tony is a friend of mine, so I have everything good to say about that. Imperium Romanum is... it's an interesting game, let me put it that way. And it's the kind of game that's... It's kind of unique. There's really not a lot like it. It is in this way similar to Pacific War. There's really nothing else quite like it. So I think it's pretty reasonable to just put all the Americans in one tray. I think I can live with that storage methodology. Yeah, there's something funny going on with some of these that I'm not sure what they are, but I'll just put them in here. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out later. A lot of times, Hexy, thanks for stopping by. A lot of times, so remember that Tony's been working on Forgotten Battles for at least 7 or 8 years, okay? So it's not like this stuff all just materialized in the last 24 months. And when we play tested Battles in the East, that was at least 4 years ago. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff has been percolating for some time. So, but yeah, Tony's a busy guy. I think he's more or less retired. So that certainly helps. I might be pretty much finished clipping here tonight because I'm sick of looking at this already again. It was a nice break to take a break from with the Fed and Empire thing, but we are done with our experimental game of it. These are Home Guard. What are they for? They're American units. I'm not sure what they're for. Here, there's the CVLs that I was looking for. And I guess we'll put these with the task force markers. That sounds good. So I think I'm done clipping for tonight. So we'll just chat. All right. So I don't play golf. I don't have time for such activities. So there's that. I've got plenty. If I need to get physical activity in, there's plenty of friggin' yard work to do around here. I spent about 45 minutes chopping wood for the fire pit immediately after work today between here and the show. I have a flannel shirt somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. So I do feel like something caught in my throat here. Obviously, whiskey is the solution. So I haven't seen Mo. Was Mo here? Mo's usually here by now. Yeah, I think I'm good for now. I think I'm going to get all of this game into 3 counter trays, though. One for miscellaneous stuff, one for the Japanese, and one for the Americans. I think we'll do it. I kind of want to try Lords of Baseball. The chances of you seeing content on Lords of Baseball are very low, however. So we'll see. Stigler, watch it. You'll get us demonetized. Whiskey cures. I've been known to make tea and put whiskey in the tea. So honey and whiskey and bourbon works pretty well with that. So, one of the things I want to do, since I think I released a video for, I bought Twilight of the Reich 2 for ASL. That is notionally a core module, so I did pick it up, and it's got like a lot of city fight stuff in it, both rules and scenario wise. There should be a video coming out sooner or later. It's in the editing queue. GCACW, Robert Phillips, good choice, excellent choice. The next game will be the redo of Stonewall in the Valley. I might do a short on Lords of Baseball. That's plausible, but we'll see. So the next, I don't know, not sure what it's going to be called, but it's going to redo Stonewall in the Valley, and it's going to bring Sheridan in the Valley, which has been like an unofficial campaign floating around for quite a while. So we're going to get that material as well. And we might get some additional stuff that wasn't in either publication to begin with. We will see, but that is what is on deck at the moment. They've got there's definitely been a significant uptick in attention paid and games sold. And you can see it when the things come up for pre-order. This didn't used to be the case where GCACW game pops up from pre-order and it's got its number in a couple of weeks. That didn't used to be the case. Even as recently as the Roads to Gettysburg 2 and Atlanta Is Ours, a couple of I think Atlanta Is Ours specifically took a little while to get to its number. So Meandering Mike, thanks for stopping by. So seeing Sheridan's Valley campaign is the reason why Stonewall in the Valley is the only one that I'll upgrade to the new version. So the original's not terribly hard to find. It's the largest single module in the series in that the campaign is 3 maps. You can also add it to, I forget whether it's On to Richmond or On to Richmond would make sense though. You can play On to Richmond with those maps. And I think we decided that we weren't going to do that for our play at Winterfest. But I'm trying to catch up to the chat here. But I mean, we had a wonderful time playing On to Richmond. So I have all of them. I have everything released for the series, new, old, magazines, everything. So I'm happy with that. I don't have all the generals, I guess, but that's fine. I don't care about that. That's a pretty good price for Stonewall in the Valley. Calling it Stonewall is Stuart, thanks for stopping by the way. Can't wait till the next episodes come out. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I'm tapping my foot here. But I think Stonewall in the Valley is... So one of the things about that campaign is it's a maneuver campaign, right? I mean, where Stonewall Jackson is showing, I don't want to use the word brilliance because he knows the Valley better than the Union guys. And it's not like he's up against U.S. Grant either, right? He's up against bozos like Nathaniel Banks. So there's that. But it's a game system that really shows you the virtue of maneuver, and I think it will work. It works really well for the Valley campaign specifically. I think so. Yeah. So there's 4 games in. Is it 3 or 4? It's something like that. Names games in the series with Stonewall in the name, right? Yeah, I think it is Stonewall's Last Battle, Stonewall in the Valley, Stonewall Jackson's Way. Am I missing one? I might be missing one. I don't know. But I think this is so I on the one hand, I agree with I agree with John Longshore. I would love to see these in digital format just for the articles. However, that said, both Skirmisher 1 and 2 did come with counters, and you wouldn't get those if they released them digitally. I think the Skirmisher 1 counter sheet might be available for download on Multiman's website. I think. I'm not sure about that. And what that counter sheet is it's the counters that you need to play the old Avalon Hill GCACW games with the current rules, because the factors are a little bit different. On the other hand, the counters from Skirmisher 2 are the counters for Burnside Takes Command, which is the Chancellor's Fredericksburg campaign, which is an interesting campaign at the operational level, not so much tactically. And then I think there was something else in there too. Rebels in the White House, but Rebels in the White House was redone as part of Roads to Gettysburg too. So I've driven through the valley. It's a beautiful valley. John Denver thought so too, I believe. So, yeah, I wasn't sure if this was still the case, because Critical Hit's kind of trying to do their own thing with the whole advanced Tobruk system thing, which some people do like. I don't feel like that's really got anything going for it that ASL or a number of other examples have. I think for the infantry stuff, I think you're better off playing ASL. If you want it for the armor stuff, maybe you're better off playing the advanced Tobruk system, but I think you're better off playing GMT's Panzer and James Day's Panzer, because that is what that is intended to do. Where the advanced Tobruk system just feels like an opportunistic grab to try and piggyback on their notoriety, as I don't know, I'm speculating here. So, now this, I actually kind of agree with Will GM for Food on this. However, I'll point out that ASL has a bit more interactive turn structure than IGO-UGO necessarily implies all the time. So now, anybody I know several people that like the advanced Tobruk system, so good for them. I don't know that. I don't think it's as die-rolly as the original Tobruk, though. I don't think. But I haven't played it, so I've leafed through a couple of the products. But I challenge anybody to go to. I mean, who doesn't already know? Somebody experienced in the system probably knows the answer to this question. Is go to the Critical Hit website and imagine MySpace, and then try and figure out, if you're interested in the advanced Tobruk system, what product it is that you are supposed to buy. And then let me know, because, there's that. But, the less IGO-UGO is generally better. I mean, I have a bit of mixed feelings about this for convention play specifically. For like a 4-hour session, I would strongly prefer not IGO-UGO, because if you do a big game, you might get half a turn in, right? If you're lucky, right? Maybe less than that. But if you're playing like a 12-hour day, I could use the break, frankly. Hey, it's going to take you 2 hours? Cool. I'll be back in 2 hours. See you then. I'm going to go grab some food and a nap. And I'm okay with that, which is another advantage of doing OCS at Winterfest, is that we will have such breaks. I think the scuttlebutt was Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2. There you go. I'll have to check that out, because I am curious, right? And I'm not even, saying I'll never play the thing. In fact, I suspect I will end up playing the thing, because one of the guys we're playing on Wednesdays with, soon to be Thursdays, is a big ATS guy. And I'm guessing we'll have the opportunity to play ATS with him at some point. And in fact, there was a session of several months ago where they did play ATS, except I wasn't there. That's why they played ATS. So I have not played either of these yet, but they look like they look pretty nice. Let me put it this way. ATS, no, it's more like the Beatles versus the Tremolos, really. I don't think the parody is quite here. Certainly not in terms of audience. Now, as far as the virtues of the game system, that's kind of a different question. But my concern with anything from Critical Hit is going to be, did they play test it? Did they proofread it? Did they edit it at all? And if the answer continues to be no, then I'm going to continue to say no to buying their products. But it has been a long time since I've really, I won't say it's been a long time since I've looked at their products, but the product I looked at was not a new product. So it is plausible that they have improved in this regard. So at the same time, I'm willing to give that system a shot. Like I said, I do know some people who do like it. I can't see me investing in it to the extent that I have invested in ASL, which, again, that is an investment that is not really paid off, because I've played since getting back into ASL. I have and that's probably close to 12 years ago now. I have probably played ASL maybe 12 times. So now this is my fault, right? So, well, I mean, in terms of overall complexity, I don't think it's more complicated than ASL. I'm not sure it's doing quite as much, but I'm confused by how it is being sold, right? I mean, is there a starter pack? When last I checked, which has been a while, there wasn't like a starter pack, or hey, start here first, or hey, here's the introduction to ATS. Here's what to take a look at. I never had anything about that. Tony from Tony's Board Life is a fan of it as well, and there are fans of it. So I'm not a big fan of either Anzio's board or really Anzio, to be honest. They better hope not, because it's the bread and butter of the company. I'd suspect that the principals would just pack it in and retire if they did. I think they'd have a hard time making that company work at its current level if they were to lose ASL. Let me put it that way. On the other hand, maybe I'm overstating that or overestimating it, because if you think about it, what do they do? One or two product, maybe 3 products a year for ASL. It's not like we got a thing a month, right? So I don't like the map in Anzio, but I like the game system even less. I don't like soak off attacks, and in Anzio, but the Anzio flavor of soak off attacks in particular, where it's just like you must attack, and that's that. Russian Campaign shares this, by the way. That's not a mechanic that I particularly like. There are other implementations of that idea that I have not objected to as much, because they're not quite as hard a soak off attack mechanic. So there are 3 basic ATS games: a Normandy, a Stalingrad, and a Bulge. Cool. Where do I find them? You can't put a link in the chat. We're not going to investigate the Critical Hit website right now. So there you go. Playing Tobruk or ATS? I assume Tobruk, since that's what you said. But I mean, the original Avalon Hill Tobruk is another classic, right? It's another one that I think there would be general agreement that it maybe doesn't hold up super duper well. But it is another classic. It's a game that tons of people played back there. That's cool. Yeah, just send me a link to what the page where there's like a thing to buy. It's an intriguing way to approach presentation as well, and one that I don't necessarily object to, because some people will be really into West Front, some people will really be into East Front. There's always room for another Bulge game, right? I'm not clear on this either. It's like, I mean, you've got the God knows how many pages is in the ASL rule book. I've lost track. And you'd have to physically count them, because they're numbered like 26A, 26A2. So because of the asinine way that they release errata pages and expansion pages, this is why I strongly recommend the digital rulebook. which is available through Wargame Vault, and which is just updated. And it just updated. You just download the new one, and you're good. You don't have to worry about the pages anymore. So to say nothing of Chapter H, right? That counts as like its own separate thing. So, I mean, if we really are serious about not wanting to see any more Bulgy games, we need to stop buying them, and no one wants to actually do that. We just want to complain about it. So I don't see any particular virtue in complaining about it. I'm not buying every Bulge game that comes out, but I'm not buying 0 new Bulge games either. So, and it's plausible that I will buy another one. So link it to my email address is in the video description. It is not in the video description on purpose, because then I get enough spam. It is in the ticker at the bottom of the screen. I use, you can use your phone, but be prepared for massive eye strain. I have a tablet that's basically for reading PDFs. I do very little on that tablet otherwise nowadays. So Will GM for Food says that basic games are simplified rules. You can buy the core rules separately. Everything else is a la carte. Well, I mean, I like the idea of not ending up with 5 million rule books. That's cool. But, and I don't mind buying the core rules separately either. I mean, we're at least used to that after the precedent that ASL has set. But I would prefer a digital rule book at this point. Now, that said, at the actual table, I prefer a physical rule book rather than a digital rule book. For reading the rules in my spare copious free time, I prefer the digital version. It's just easier to deal with, and yes, I do use my phone for this from time to time, but generally that happens because it's a pinch. I mean, I would love to see ASL, and you know what? Maybe the fine folks at Critical Hit can take advantage of Multiman's, let's say, retrograde way of selling ASL product. There's a lot of problems because they feel like MMP basically publishes ASL in exactly the way Avalon Hill did. You got a big rule book and a binder. You've got individual modules, which other than Beyond Valor are like country level modules. I think that's a really backward way to do it. I would probably, and they're all these big box games too, right? Most of them are 3-inch boxes. I wouldn't do it that way. I would probably try and I would go all a la carte, and say, you know what? When you order the basic ASL kit, you're getting the pocket rule book and a shrink-wrapped pack of maps and counters that contains basically the content and maybe or maybe not scenarios. I might sell scenario packs separately. I think there's an opportunity for MMP to improve the way they sell that stuff and make it easier for them to keep it in stock, and also make it easier for the people to get the stuff. Because I don't need the box. I got a pile of empty ASL boxes up here that I have essentially no use for. So, Eric Goebel, thank you so much. Much appreciated. The support is always helpful. So, as someone want to say Critical Hit did, and I find that absurd. I know I have personally seen the ASL Gettysburg module that Critical Hit did, and that is even more absurd. You know what, though? I will say this. You can play all the ASL you want for $30. Just buy starter kit number 1. Now, you have to be okay with this. Is actually a great way to kind of wind this down, because we're going to talk about replayability. And the 6, I think is it 6 or 8? I think it's 6 scenarios. I'll check it out. Will GM for Food. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. The squad was not like an important unit in the Civil War battle. That's why it's absurd. I lost where I was here. I want to say this is the case, but remember that this varies widely by experience level. Let me put it that way. You play a great example is Guards Counterattack. Okay. That's not a particularly small scenario. It's a redo of a classic squad leader scenario that was designed in 1977. And it's kind of a beefy city fight scenario. If you're new at it, it's probably going to take you 8 hours to play that scenario. Experienced players can play it in 2, no problem. So it's going to vary widely by experience level. But in terms of the ASL starter kit, if you don't mind sticking with those 6 scenarios that are in there, or just picking up, every year buy another starter kit pack, or the starter kit 2, 3, and 4, they have done scenario packs for starter kit. And they're supposedly doing more. They're talking about an ASL starter kit magazine. And I like starter kit. I think there are concerns about starter kit versus regular ASL. Ooh, just looking at my busted toenail. It's gross. We will not be featuring it on camera. You can start with any of the starter kits up to 1, 2, or 3. Goss, hands down, Goss. The reason is there is that Hanut game that they did in World at War magazine, which will at least give you a taste of Goss, but it isn't really an on-ramp to Goss. It's too stripped down. ASL, it is possible, even if you forget that ASL starter kit exists, it is possible to just start slow. And even if you don't have a teacher, if you got a teacher, then that eliminates any problems. Just start slow. Go through somebody. We're talking about this on the Ardwulf Lair Discord server, for which there is an invite link in the video, in the ticker. We were talking about this, go slow, just make mistakes. If you can't find what you're looking for, look the rules up as you need them. If you can't find it, make a decision that makes sense, but then make a note. So after the game, you can go back and maybe go on a bulletin board somewhere and ask questions about it. So, and as Doug says, the ASL rulebook is really well organized. It just doesn't feel like it when you're learning the game, because it's not designed to teach you the game. It's a reference rule book, and strictly a reference rule book. It is possible, but very difficult for a rule book to be a really good, or even good, learning rule book, and simultaneously be a really good reference rule book. There's some incompatibility there because you're trying to do 2 different things. So most rule book designers will do will either decide one way or the other, or they'll try and do both. And generally that's a less effective way to write a rule book. So I will point out, I think on BGG, there is a giant list of ASL starter kit acronyms that you will need to know. You do get the hang of that fairly quickly, but but you also got a lot of different terrain types. But remember that this is a lot of what starter kit did. It just gave you all the simple terrain types without giving you 2 million different terrain types, some of which had fairly complicated rules attached to them. So this is kind of right? It's a very good reference rule book. If you know your way around that rule book, but you need a reminder about some specific rule, you can find what you're looking for in ASL. There's also an index, a good index for that matter. So, and Pocket String says that Noble Knight has ATS. That's true. However, on my Noble Knight list of things to eventually maybe buy if they show up at a price I want to pay, are the Grognard Sims Death Ride Normandy games, not the Kursk stuff. I'm not interested in that. But the Normandy stuff I am tempted by, and it's just expensive. So, and that's not the next campaign, by the way. Not a terrible idea, but that is not the next campaign. ASL is well suited to programmed learning. I mean, Squad Leader was suited to programmed learning too. And that is it's not really called that, and it's not quite the same type of programmed instruction that the original Squad Leader did. but you can look through if a certain lens, if you squint hard enough and look at the ASL starter kits and still see the programmed instruction method. Starter kit 1 gives you the basic stuff. You have infantry, you've got leaders, you've got a couple of different kinds of support weapons. Starter kit 2 adds ordnance. Starter kit 3 adds vehicles. Starter kit 4 adds the Japanese, the Pacific, concealment, and something else. I forget what. So Mark is a big fan of the Death Ride games, and I listened to, of all things, Harold Buchanan did an interview with the folks from Grognard Sims, and the a lot of the things that they had to say about that system I found fairly intriguing. So I wouldn't say this at this point. However, if you looked at any of the first 3 Goss games, yeah, you would have this. It would be pretty easy to get this impression. The difference between ASL and Goss in terms of difficulty of learning is you can start easy just by giving yourself a subset of the game to learn in ASL. It could be the subset that's in the starter kit, right? A limited selection of terrain, a limited selection of support weapons, a limited selection of weird situational rules, and start learning that way. There is no comparable on-ramp to Goss. The rules are very tightly intermeshed. The way the movement works is absolutely critical, and if you do not understand it, or if you screw it up, you will screw your game up. So you've got to need... Yeah, this was this past weekend, by the way. I dread going to Costco because I know we're going to spend like $1,000 on, and it's not even like we're buying like TVs and shit. It's like, oh, here's some huge bag of cat food and that kind of stuff. So what ends up happening is we go every 3 or 4 months, and then that guarantees we'll spend $1,000. So, Stigler's got, I'm not sure, I missed it. I probably missed some chat here, but if we're talking about swords, by sword and bayonet, yeah, that's the small battles GBACW. That's going to be a great vehicle for learning GBACW. Ooh, this is interesting, Doug. Thank you for saying this, because this may have unsold me on it. I'm still thinking about it, right? Maybe if I get the opportunity to fiddle with somebody else's copy, I can make a more better decision. I expect to spend $1,500 on a major home appliance. I don't expect to spend $1,500 on eggs, broccoli, frozen hot dogs, and cat food. So, which is kind of what happened. I mean, it was more than that, obviously, but it was, Jesus Christ, this is a lot of stuff. My wife actually wouldn't let me see the register. She's like ringing up. She's like, go away. Just go away. You're going to flip out when you see this number. And she was right. I flipped out when I saw the receipt when we got in the car. So, in any case, all right. So, okay. So there's Hexy. Hexy's also a big negatory. Now, I have respect for what the folks at Grognard Sims, and for that matter, Diffraction Entertainment, are doing. But I decided, having looked at Singapore, that the diffraction system is not for me. It was worth investigating, and I landed on no, absolutely not. And I might end up saying the same thing about Death Ride 2. But then again, we've played Goss, and is it more complicated than that? I doubt it. But it's huge. So there's that. That's fair. That's fair. Maybe. I don't know what the Death Ride name signifies. Is it a reference to something? It could be, very easily. But it feels like a sort of generic branding thing. Also, it's also fairly confusing to figure out what to buy for that system, too, I will point out. At least for Kursk. I was paying attention when they were releasing the Normandy stuff. And so I know that to play the game, you need the Point du Hoc module, which is weird. And then you can add Omaha to that, and then from Omaha, you could start adding other beaches. And they've got quite a bit of stuff out for it now. So the map graphics, I don't really hate the counters, but the map graphics are not very good, I got to tell you. So anyway, we are pretty close to wrapping it up here. So here's what's happening. Tomorrow we have Ryan and Wes on from Wharf Rat Games. There ought to be an unboxing video. It all depends on what I get edited. I did an unboxing. I filmed it for Lords of Baseball, but the video is shit and you're not going to see it. So I might do something else with it, but it won't be that. But in any case, I would think you could play ATS on Vassal. Well, you know, I don't know that any, I mean, I'm curious, but I don't know that more commentary is necessary. What I will say is that my tastes and Doug's tastes tend to be pretty similar. And for that matter, my taste and Hexy's taste tend to be maybe not as similar as Doug and I, but still, there's a lot of overlap there. So if they both bounced off of it, then the chances of me bouncing off of it are not bad. And it's not like the investment is a trivial investment. So, I mean, I just spent probably close to $200 on Fed and Empire expansions. I had the game already. I didn't need that. Ooh. The maps, yeah, I don't like the maps. Odd space CRT for platoons, that seems weird to me too. Scenario setups, Doug, worse than Goss Atlantic Wall, because that scenario setup was trash. So yeah, John, you've got as much of this material as anybody I've ever spoken to. So, ooh, that's bad. Because I had a hell of a time setting up those small starter scenarios for Goss Atlantic Wall. Small my ass. The learning scenario for Atlantic Wall, this is again the Decision Games Goss Atlantic Wall, is Operation Goodwood, which is an interesting situation and which is actually a pretty interesting situation in Goss because of the way that artillery works and because of the way the movement works. The problem with it's not even a bad scenario as such. The problem is it's a shitty starter scenario because it's on roughly a 10 by 15 hex area of one of the maps, okay? But in that area, you're packing like 100 counters. It's a lot. You've got like multiple Commonwealth divisions, and most of the German defenders are like a scratch force, but there's still a good amount of them. In addition to that, in an effort to make you not have to deal with the full Goss artillery rules, which are not that friggin' complicated in my opinion. I mean, they're more complicated than most other games' artillery rules, but it's not that bad. Instead, you will replace the regular Goss artillery rules for the Operation Goodwood scenario with a completely different set of simplified artillery rules that take up just as much page count as the actual artillery rules. Then, when you move on to the next scenario, Operation Epsom, you will still not use the regular Goss artillery rules. You will use a completely different set of substitute artillery rules, which again are not really simpler than the regular Goss artillery rules. The whole thing was just the scenario. Atlantic Wall is a good game, but you've got to A, struggle with the rule book, which is granted a lot easier now, and B, struggle with the setups if you had the original material and not the updated rule book, which you can download, or the game specific rules, I should say. So, well, this is, this is exactly it. It is an entire Commonwealth core, as the starter scenario. It's absolutely absurd. They could actually have done like a Michael Wittmann type of scenario where it's like one German counter running around trying to kill as much stuff as possible. That might have been somewhat interesting. Scale's not really right for it, but, this is not a World War, okay, but this is not a World War II reference, right? So why? I'm not following I mean, I see what you're saying here. I'm just not seeing why that's a good piece of branding for a World War II game, right? So, GBACW is really good, and the more you play, honestly, the more of it you play, the better it gets. I find this is the case with OCS too, and probably is generally true of large format games with relatively high complexity. So I certainly cannot complain about GBACW. I do feel like I prefer GCACW to GBACW, but that to me is a choice between operational and tactical or grand tactical, and not really a statement about the virtues of the individual systems as such, right? Mo is finally here now that we're ready to pack it in. Fantastic. Scott Rowland as well, and Chris K. So it happens. It happens. Everybody's got copious free time around here, as you know. So in any case, so we do have what's coming up. So we do have the Chit Show tomorrow with Ryan and Wes, and we'll talk about what they've got cooking and why they decided to start their own publishing house instead of just working with the existing publishers that they were already working with. I'm particularly interested in hearing the answer to that question. And like I said, there should be at least one other video this week. We'll see what I actually get edited. At the top of the editing queue are the 2 Noble Knight videos, however. So you'll see that before. I mean, maybe I'll get multiple things done. Like 2 weeks ago, I actually did get like 4 videos edited, and that's why you saw consistent videos that week and not just live shows. So NHL starts tomorrow. I thought it was. I must be thinking of the NFL, which I absolutely do not give the most microscopic shit about. So in any case, and the Guardians lost, by the way, so there's that 3-0. So we'll see how that goes. So it is a best of 5 series, so as I recall. So I had to look at that. It's like the wild cards are 3, best of 3, the division's best of 5, and I think the pennant series is best of 7, I think. I don't know. So, well, this makes sense, just not for World War II East Front. I don't know that the branding is, and this does nothing about the game. This is just the name. I don't know if they necessarily expected. Let me put it a little bit differently. To some extent, this kind of thing is just going to be a niche product, right? It's Kursk at the platoon level. I mean, not everybody's going to be into that, or for a variety of reasons. Either it seems too complicated, and it is fairly complicated as far as I can tell, or it's too huge, which is a completely reasonable position to take, or for whatever other reason, right? However, they're not doing their accessibility any favors by picking an obscure Franco-Prussian War reference to be the brand title on the product line that doesn't mean anything, and their big original thing was Kursk, right? So, okay. Yeah, I don't really have I never once went to a Blue Jackets game when we were down there. Let me put it that way. I did occasionally go to Cleveland Lumberjacks games when we had minor league hockey up here. We do still have minor league hockey. It's just the Lake Erie Monsters now. The Lumberjacks are long gone. So I could have a rant about this too. And the fact is, I'm tired and I want to have a sandwich. So I think we are we are actually a couple minutes over. So, all right. I've given you the next couple of videos. So, well, I agree with Stigler on this. This is emblematic of a larger problem in professional sports today. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's been a great show. I think it's been a less terrible show than we've had sometimes, at least. And we'll be back next week. Everybody have a great rest of the night.